Where is Bitcoin stored after all? Can you store it on a USB? Can you send it over email? In today's episode, we're going to talk about Bitcoin public addresses. Thank you for joining me again. Today, we're going to talk about something that wasn't that clear to me when I was learning about Bitcoin and about blockchain, which is where is Bitcoin stored after all and how can I access it safely? So one thing that you need to understand is that you cannot download Bitcoin. You cannot send it over email. Bitcoin is something ethereal. It's something that is publicly stored and available to anyone with a Bitcoin Explorer to see. And it's basically stored in the Bitcoin blockchain. And everyone can see all the Bitcoin that is getting transacted. And the transactions happen among Bitcoin addresses. So first thing that you need to understand is that in the blockchain and in the Bitcoin world, an address, a public address, will be the equivalent of a bank account in the traditional world. Now, that means that while in the traditional world you can have dollars stored in your bank account that has a certain number, in the Bitcoin world you can have a certain Bitcoin balance that is stored in the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay? So one thing that is a little bit counterintuitive is if you're dealing with a decentralized network, then who is issuing this Bitcoin number, this account number, this Bitcoin address? I was very confused when I was learning about this because, again, if I go to a bank, the bank is the issuer of my bank account. So who in the world is verifying that my Bitcoin address is actually not going to be a duplicate, is actually not going to collide with someone else's? And the reason that you start getting all this FUD, all this fear, uncertainty, and desperation cleared out is because as you learn more, you understand that it is because mathematically it is impossible for you to generate two addresses that clash if you are using good enough randomness and entropy, as it is called in software engineering. So while in the traditional finance world, a bank will issue a bank account, in the decentralized world, in the blockchain world, a wallet, a software that is generating this wallet for you to store Bitcoin is the entity that is generating it for you. You are creating your own public address, and you're creating it by deriving it from a random number of 256 bits that, again, hardware wallets, software wallets, all these Bitcoin wallets that are from good software providers, you need to make sure that you're using one that is from a reputable provider. But as long as it's a modern wallet, it has all this randomness, all this entropy for you to create addresses that are impossible to clash. How unlikely is it for you to have a Bitcoin address clash? Well, it will be basically more likely for you to get struck by a lightning 500 times or for you to pick the same atom twice from two different planets. So if you were basically generating trillions of wallets per second for 100 billion years, you will still not be able to have a Bitcoin address clash. That's how astronomical this number is. So the one thing that you do need to be very careful with is that when you're creating these public addresses, when you're creating these wallets, what the software will offer you, and it is the right way to do it typically, is to store your private keys, basically to store the words that generate this randomness, generate this secret combination that generates the public Bitcoin address. And that is a thing that you need to store very carefully. How carefully? Well, the best practice is for you not to store it digitally. In fact, it is a best practice for you to write them down on paper, or there are people that do it engraved on metal so that they are fireproof, and you actually store those things safely because those private keys are essentially the password that unlock the content of everything that you have stored on your Bitcoin public address. So while you don't need to worry about any kind of conflicts or collisions while generating the public Bitcoin address, you need to understand that a public Bitcoin address is precisely public. Anyone can see their content and their value on the Bitcoin blockchain, and only you possessing the private keys that lock on or unlock that content can actually be the one that modify or send the Bitcoin that is stored there. So the private keys are the things that you need to store very safely, and that you basically need to have these best practices of doing it offline. So now you have understood where Bitcoin is stored. It's on the Bitcoin blockchain. It's on a public address, much like a mailing address. A Bitcoin public address, as long as it's known by someone else, you can send any amount of Bitcoin to that address, but only the one that possesses the key, much like you possessing the key to your mailbox or to your house can access the value of those. Well, only those that possess the private keys of public addresses in the Bitcoin blockchain network can access that Bitcoin value. Okay, hope this has been valuable for you. If it has been the case, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps tremendously. And until the next one, see ya.